My name is Zachary Conan. This is a versus video idea, a suggestion from Brandon, who's been a long-time viewer of this channel. Really cool guy, really great guy. Just some preliminaries before. If this video cuts out at any time, I filmed these on my cell phone, and it's haggard, it is falling apart, it's malfunctioning like crazy. The eventual collapse of my primitive technology will not deter me from making some good points in this video. Just if it cuts off, just know that. Just know that I'm a deeply, clinically unprofessional YouTuber. But I have a lot to say about Sofia Coppola, though. And this suggestion was commented on in a discussion we were having about my Sofia Coppola versus Stanley Kubrick video, where Brandon basically said, you know what, let's just cut to the chase. We're all thinking about it. It's an easy decision, the easiest one to go for. We're all secretly thinking about it. Let's just do it. Francis Ford Coppola versus Sofia Coppola. We're all comparing them anyway in our own ways. It might not be right, but that's what we're doing. And I said, okay, I'll take that challenge. I shall do it. He went with Francis Ford Coppola. Brandon did. I think for very obvious reasons. Those reasons being called The Godfather Parts 1 and 2, The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now. And those are the films I'm actually going to focus on when comparing them to Sofia's work, because I think that's fair, because Francis has had a very rocky rise to where he was able to make The Godfather 1, and then a very sharp decline afterwards, financially and creatively and morally. So those are what I'm going to focus on. And I think that they're the most philosophically compatible of his films. His best films are philosophically astute, philosophically aware, and completely philosophically compatible with Sofia's, with a few minor, well, not minor, they're actually really major differences. Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia Coppola are both deeply existentialist filmmakers, but Francis Ford Coppola begins cynically with The Godfather, and by Apocalypse Now, he's downright nihilistic. His existentialism took a very pessimistic turn towards nihilism. Now let's look at Sofia Coppola's philosophy, because her philosophy is super intact over the course of her career, from '99 with Virgin Suicides up until now. And even though the Virgin Suicides is a deeply manipulative picture, it does focus on the self-mythology that goes with positivist existentialist philosophy. So, but her philosophy is best encapsulated by films like Lost in Translation and Somewhere. So Sofia Coppola's whole thing is basically My Bloody Valentine Loveless or like Slow Dive Souvlaki. It's basically the shoegaze genre in Manifest. The idea that we all live in a super busy universe, full of cacophony, full of this ravenous noise, and it's just impossible to have a true human connection or to really feel like we are even growing, because we live in this postmodern monolith that has already been thousands of times over. But her positivism, her optimism comes where shoegaze is like very loud noise, very loud music. It's punk music, it's rebellious, and it just it sounds very cacophonous, but if you put your ear to it and listen very closely, you will hear the most soft, sweet, and pure melodies imaginable. And that's the way she views this new modernist universe. The ending of Lost in Translation really drives this home. If you listen as hard as you can, an answer will be whispered to you, and it will be a positive one. It will be one that you will need. So I want to frame this from like Milan Kundera, who wrote The Wonderful Unbearable Lightness of Being, possibly my favorite piece of existentialist literature ever, because I'm a deeply romanticist person, and that's a deeply romantic book about a slightly or oftentimes pessimistic philosophy. And I think that we have two sides of the same coin. Kundera's paradox was, we can either choose weight or we could choose light. We can choose to be pinned down by our lover. We can choose to be pinned down by meaning, by reflections, by associations, by art, pinned down by the beauty of this universe, pinned down to it. Or we could be as light as air, and we can float away without meaning, without purpose, almost in absurdity, but in a very romantic kind of absurdity. I would posit here that that has always been the conundrum of existentialism, because you must choose one or the other. You can't have both. That's the point of the paradox. And both are unbearable options, as elucidated by the title of Kundera's work. Francis Ford Coppola is light, and Sofia Coppola is weight. All of Sofia Coppola's films are about finding weight, and all of Francis Ford Coppola's films are about characters losing that weight, losing the connections. Look at The Godfather. The Godfather's parts 1 and 2 is about Michael Corleone losing his morality, losing his family, literally, figuratively, losing everything that makes him human, to where he is light as air in the worst possible ideation of that concept, in the worst possible way. Look at The Conversation. The Conversation is about someone who goes from being bared down by paranoia, bared down by the weight of secrecy, to where at the end of the film you have one of the best endings in all of 70s cinema, with him tearing apart his apartment, looking for something that maybe just isn't even there. He has been given the gift of lightness, and that lightness is unbearable. Apocalypse Now is most likely the greatest interpretation of this paradox of lightness of being. Martin Sheen's character learns the way to be light from Kurtz, and it completely destroys him. And that film is meta to the max, because that film, Heart of Darkness style, completely destroyed Francis Ford Coppola. And I do believe Heart of Darkness is also a deeply existentialist short narrative as well by Joseph Conrad, but deeply, deeply pessimistic. It's about the horror of the lightness of being. It's about the horror of not having a god. It's about the horror of being your own. It's about the horror of self-mythology. So before this goes any further, let's look at Sofia very quickly. All of her films are about characters incorporating some means of weight into their life, incorporating some meaning, self-mythologizing themselves. That's all that The Virgin Suicides was the tragedy of self-mythology, but also the beauty of it as well. There's a beautiful reverence, it's a beautiful sainthood, it's a beautiful purity to the way that the boys look at the girls. Lost in Translation is about two people who are light as air, have no attachments, no connections, and they build a tenable one with each other, a very fragile one, but one that makes all of the difference in their lives. The film Marie Antoinette is about a woman trying to bear the entire weight of a country, the entire weight of womanhood, of parenthood, on her back, trying to be pinned down, but everyone wants to keep her in the air as something ethereal, as something that is just non-corporeal, something that is not exactly here in our lived-in society, lived-in universe. And she wants to be something that you can touch, something that you can feel, something tactile, a tactile romance. And she tries to find weight. Somewhere is a perfect example of this, between a father and a daughter attempting to really build this connection and be weightful. It's, Nowhere, the idea of existentialist Nowhere, but the whole point of it is that Stephen Dorff's character is someone, but nowhere, and that goes to Sofia Coppola's overall philosophy of this insane postmodern universe not really having a true characteristic, and yet we are actual people, so it's meaningful people in a meaningless environment. So you get a little bit of Sisyphean Camus in there as well, but the only way to make sense of this world is to live pinned down to something, and he needs to live pinned down to his daughter, and he also needs to live pinned down to the idea of his persona outside of his celebrity. Then we also have The Bling Ring, which is about a bunch of kids growing up in a universe that prides itself on being light as air, on being without responsibility, of being without any sort of morality. It's about kids who actually need to feel the weight, to feel the unbearable weight of humanity, of accountability. And The Beguiled. The Beguiled is a horror story a la Sofia Coppola. The Beguiled is about a man who had no responsibilities, being surrounded by weight. Women who need to be pinned down by love, and they don't exactly understand how to, in a healthy way, how to express that attraction, that eroticism in a healthy way. Not that the male character does either. He's just as toxic as the rest of them. But it's about people who have lived so light and so free of romance and sentimentality that the second weight hits them, it's like kryptonite. It's like poison and destroys everything. So the primary difference, obviously, I'm a Sofia Coppola stan. I ride or die for her. She is my bae. Sofia Coppola makes better films, in my opinion, because her philosophy is well-reasoned. It's positive, and I think it's a healthier message to hear. No one could ever make a Godfather, and you would not want them to, because The Godfather only needed to be made once, and it was made flawlessly. Flawless picture. Beautiful, beautiful film. I couldn't rave enough about that picture. But the thing is, The Godfather, I do not believe, teaches me valuable lessons. Not that a film necessarily needs to, but for the sake of this video, for the sake of this face-off, I would rather be told that I am not hopeless than life is pessimistic. And I would rather be told it in a way that I find believable, in a way that I find authentic, in a way that Sofia Coppola would frame the argument for me. Francis Ford Coppola has very important messages to teach me, and it's important to learn cynicism, it's important to learn nihilism, it's important to learn the absurdity of meaninglessness. But I think that that's almost a given in this new world, and I think that's the starting point of Sofia Coppola's films. Like Lost in Translation or Somewhere begins from the point of meaninglessness. It begins post-Nietzsche. It begins post we all know life has no inherent purpose or meaning, that we're all going to die alone. It begins at that. And it goes, okay, what can we build on top of that? Whereas Francis almost has to tell you it, because like The Godfather, a very intrinsically religious and very close-knit Italian family with strong moral roots, that kind of the weight of their lives has to be removed to expose the meaninglessness and the nihilism and the true savagery that exists beneath the surface of that facade of of the new modern American life and American crime life as well. Right, Sofia Coppola starts at that point and goes, how can we cure the incurable? How do we cure this affliction? This modern affliction is the understanding that there is no God. I feel like Francis convinced us of that very well, that there is no God, that there is no purpose, and that there are no heroes. But I think Sofia Coppola is doing her best, and I think she's doing it remarkably well, like a master. She's one of the great masters of films, just like her father was. Sophia is teaching us how to live with that concept. Not just that concept, how to live with that reality. How to live with that complete, concrete reality. There is no God, there is nothing, there is only us. But that doesn't mean that we're meaningless. It doesn't mean that we lack direction. It just means we have to listen closely. That the meaning of life has simply been lost in the translation of mere being. And that we're all trying to become in a universe that has already been. Sofia Coppola's films are about dynamic becomings, not static beings. And I actually wouldn't charge Francis's with being static beings. I think his films have that transcendental quality as well. Only I think Sofia Coppola's films are really about that quite literally. She wants her films to find meaning through watching them, through unfolding nearly organically. Her films find meaning in the process of unfolding before you, through her compositional qualities, through the framing of her philosophical and romantic arguments. Whereas Francis Ford Coppola's films lose meaning in that exact same way. So they are inverse of each other. It's fucking beautiful. It's really amazing to really think about right now. That's the primary difference. I didn't want to be like, super catty and just go, this is what makes one right. I really wanted to elaborate on this. This is why I think Sofia Coppola is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, because I believe that she is like a philosopher, and her philosophy is actually helpful and beneficial to me as a human being. I know life is meaningless. I don't need to be told that in 1,000 different ways, even if all of those ways are beautiful. and immaculate like Coppola's films, like Francis Sr.'s films. I need to be told that I'm not hopeless. I know life is hopeless. I need someone to tell me that I'm not, though, and that's what Sofia Coppola does for me, and I couldn't ever thank her enough for that. That's one of the most valuable messages that any philosopher, any artist has ever told me, and that's something that Francis Ford Coppola has never even thought to tell me. And that's not his fault. It just wasn't in his wheelhouse, wasn't in his artistic vocabulary or visual grammar at that time. But it's in Sofia's, and that surely has to be something that Francis bestowed in her, that she was able to grow into an incredibly healthy, new modernist, existentialist philosopher of images on film. I love Sofia Coppola. I also love you guys. You guys should subscribe to this channel. This video has been going on for 15 minutes and 30 seconds, and my camera, my phone has not failed on me yet, so let's not test the dragon. Let's end it here. And thank you, Brandon, for that suggestion. If you have a suggestion on two different filmmakers you would like to see me kind of face off against each other, or just compare, I thought this was a bit more, civil comparison rather than my face-offs. Just leave it in the comments. Tell me which ones you would like to compare. Make sure they have a string of similarity between them, and that'll be really fun. My name is Zachary Conan. Thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot that people are tuning into these because of how shoestring this channel has become as of late. Not that it was ever a glorious channel of technological advances and innovations, but now it really, really is completely shoestring. Thank you so much for sticking by this channel. We're going to make some improvements soon, but until then, I think these are great conversations with a lot of fruit to them, and I couldn't ask for more than your interactions and your support and your suggestions. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day, and good morning, by the way. It's very early here. You guys got me out of bed early.